Hey, it's Hunt. You found Hunt on Saints. We're talking black and gold football. Do us a favor, hit the like button, share your comments below, and hit that subscription button so you can get all of our content. Enjoy.
NOLA.com came out with a really cool article that I very much agreed with. They put out the 5 Saints who have the most to prove entering this training camp. First up, they brought up really everyone's obvious choice here. It was Peyton Turner. We've talked ad nauseum all offseason about Peyton Turner. What's he going to do? Is he going to finally live up to that first-round pick that he was? Again, a first-round pick that has been very disappointing in his first 2 seasons, has been kind of unhealthy. And even when he is healthy and on the field, he's shown flashes, but very, very inconsistent. It's a make-or-break year for him because, think about it, you drafted Isaiah Foskey out of Notre Dame in that second round. Foskey's had at least 10 sacks his last 2 years at Notre Dame. He had 10 in 2021 and then 10 and a half this past season. I know you used a second-round pick on him. That's a guy that a lot of people may have thought could have went in that first round. Then your first-round pick was obviously Bryan Bresee. Now, he's a defensive tackle, but he has, the body, he has that size and the mobility to kind of move inside and outside if absolutely needed. This is very much a make-or-break year for Peyton Turner, not only because you're bringing in these young, talented rookies, but honestly, if the season started right now, Carl Granderson would be your starting defensive end opposite Cam Jordan. Granderson's a guy who had 8 sacks last year. What could he do in another year in that Dennis Allen defense? He kind of seems like the safer option right now as well. I mean, Turner's certainly talented. He's a guy that you drafted big for the defensive end spot, a lot like a Bresee. Could play inside and kick down if you needed him to, but spends most of his time on that edge. But really, what are you going to get out of it? I just talked about it. His first 2 years in New Orleans, wildly inconsistent, can't really stay on the field at all. Is this his last chance in New Orleans? It very well might be. They may decide, hey, look, we know we spent a first-round pick on this guy. For whatever reason, he's not working out. We have a Bryan Bresee who can be versatile on the defensive line. Carl Granderson's outplaying him. What are they going to do in next year's draft? There's a lot of good defensive linemen in the upcoming draft. I really think this might be the last chance for Peyton Turner. And if he doesn't show significant improvements and have a bounce-back season, the Saints may very well move on from him. This could be his last season in the black and gold. So definitely one of the 5 players who has a lot to prove. Then they switched to the offensive line for a pair of guys. Now, I could have put the whole offensive line outside of Ryan Ramczyk and Eric McCoy on this list, but they go Cesar Ruiz. And I talked about him a little bit yesterday with the news of Trey Turner. And I think the signing of Trey Turner says about all you need to know about a guy like Cesar Ruiz. They're bringing in Trey Turner. They want that competition. We had Sharif on yesterday. He was talking about pushing these guys. They want to see them pushed more. They're obviously not happy with their performance. I would also add Andrus Peat. I mean, it's not just Cesar Ruiz. Pete does have a little bit more job security because of that big contract he's under. He's not as easy to move, but I mean, there's going to be competition on the O-line all training camp. I mentioned it a little bit yesterday, but I'll kind of reiterate this point. This was a weird draft pick for me in terms of the Saints picking him. They used the first-round pick on this guy 3 years ago, and when he was coming out of Michigan, he played a little bit of center. He was mainly that interior offensive lineman, either left guard, right guard, wherever you needed him. And then when they drafted him, they said, hey, we're going to have Cesar Ruiz. We're going to groom him to become our starting center. But you had just drafted Eric McCoy the draft before, and he was a really nice center. He's still one of the more consistent centers, not just in the NFC or in your division, in the entire NFL. It was always kind of a weird pick for me. And, he's been really uncomfortable, I guess is a good way to put it. He's had some ups, but he's had a lot of downs. What are they going to do there? Is he going to lose that job to Trey Turner? He very well might. He certainly has a lot to prove as well. They stayed on the offensive line with their next pick. It was Trevor Penning, the big left tackle. He had a lot of hype coming into the draft last season. And, the Saints grabbed him with one of their 2 first-round picks. They took Chris Olave, and then a few picks later, grabbed Trevor Penning. I liked the pick at the time. I mean, a lean guy, but a big body, a wide base. Perfect for that left tackle spot. This is another obvious one for me because what is his future in New Orleans? If the season were to begin today, Trevor Penning would probably not be your left tackle. It would be James Hurst. James Hurst outplayed him last year, and all reports are he's looked better so far. So he would probably be your starting left tackle. He's another guy that when he gets on the field, he struggled a little bit with consistency, but really just cannot stay healthy. It is a big year for Trevor Penning, not just because he's in danger of losing his starting job, but he's playing for that second contract. Left tackles are coveted in this league. We've seen the kind of deals these elite tackles have. If he wants that type of money, he's going to have to show a lot of improvement, or the Saints are going to move on from him, and I don't know how big the market would be for this guy. Then they switched to the defensive side a little bit. As far as NOLA.com, they went Zack Baun. Now, I totally agree with this, but I think the whole linebacker room, just as a whole, is a question mark. Outside, of course, Demario Davis and Pete Werner, who were two very good starters. But Baun's another guy you drafted fairly high. A lot of people had high expectations when he was coming out of Wisconsin, but really hasn't panned out. I mean, he was okay as a rookie, but then got passed up by Pete Werner pretty quickly and hasn't seen the field much. He's another guy. We see it in the trend. It's the Saints and the Pelicans. It seems like New Orleans athletes just cannot stay healthy. But as far as the linebacker room as a whole goes, I think that's a bigger issue. Because sure, you'd like to see a lot out of Zack Baun. It is certainly a big year of him. Demario Davis is solid. Pete Werner making plays. But who are the backups to those guys? Because, I mean, outside of Baun, what do you have? You have rookie DeMarco Jackson. He's a solid piece in experience. Anthony Orji played really well in college. You're excited about him. He's inexperienced as well. You also lost Caden Ellis. I think that this year's not just big for Zack Baun, but it's the linebacker room as a whole. Because if Demario Davis and Pete Werner go down and Baun's either still not ready or not healthy, you're relying on either Anthony Orji and DeMarco Jackson, two unproven rookies, to step in and be a starting inside linebacker in the NFL. That's really not a good look. This is important for the entire defense for a guy like Zack Baun to step up and really show that those high expectations for him were actually warranted, that he can actually make those pay off. Big step up for him to give this team depth, if nothing else. And the final guy they went with was on the offensive side of the ball, and it was for a different reason. It was not for, hey, he hasn't performed up to standards, he's got competition at the position. It was just, what's this guy going to look like with almost 2 full football seasons off? And that's Michael Thomas. I mean, obviously, we know what Thomas can do when he's on the field. I mean, think about all the records he set when Breeze was here. He had all those receptions. He had all those yards. They called him the slant king because he's so good at those short to intermediate routes. But can he stay healthy? We haven't seen it. We thought at the beginning of last year that this was going to happen. The first 3 games of the season, he's rolling. Looked really good in that early season game against the Atlanta Falcons, especially in that fourth quarter where he had multiple touchdowns. But a report came out earlier this week. He will be a full participant in training camp, but I got to be honest, that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in me. It kind of seems like the same old song and dance, something we've heard before. It's kind of one of those, I'm going to take a wait and see approach. I'm going to kind of believe it when I see it. But Thomas really does need to step up and prove that he's worthy of the big money they gave him, because let's be honest, he set all those records. They gave him that big money deal. He hasn't been on the field a lot since they gave him that big money. Why? It was obviously injury, but it was his fault a little bit. You remember the ankle problem. He had surgery, but he opted to push it back, had it late in the season, wound up missing the entire year. We talked a little bit about it this morning on OTB, and, Jake and T-Bob, me, Mario, we were talking of like, can Michael Thomas be that superstar that he was before he had all these injuries? And my response was, I don't think he has to be. He's not going to be keyed in on. He's not going to be that sole pass catcher like he has been for the last few years. Saints have a talented wide receiver room. I mean, Rashid Shaheed's going to continue to step up, and Chris Olave might actually become the number 1 receiver on this team. I think he has a little bit better of a route tree. He catches the ball downfield a little bit more. Teams aren't going to be able to key in on Thomas. Thomas is going to line up in that slot because you have an Olave on the outside, because you have a Shaheed who can play inside and out. I mean, Thomas is going to create a lot of mismatches for you. The question is, can he stay healthy? But looking back at this list, I saw something that was pretty troubling. I obviously agree with this list, but it makes me realize just how bad the Saints have been in recent years when it comes to drafting in the first round. Cesar Ruiz, Peyton Turner, Trevor Penning. They've been your draft picks in the last 3 drafts, your first round. You made Ruiz, then Turner, then Trevor Penning. Now, Chris Olave was in there as well with Trevor Penning, so you have had some hits. At least so far, Olave is looking like a really, really good pick. I'll get into him a little bit in the next segment. But you also just moved on from Marcus Davenport, who was a first-round pick. Not too long ago, you gave up multiple draft picks to move back up into the first round to take a Marcus Davenport. He couldn't stay on the field. When he was on the field, he was inconsistent. He was a very underwhelming first-round pick. I mean, look, the Saints have done a lot of good. They've had some hits in the first round. I mean, I just mentioned Chris Olave. Marcus Lattimore's been a great player. They've had some late-round finds that have been pretty good, but in the recent history, they have struggled mightily in the first round of drafts. And whether these guys pan out or not, that's something the Saints are going to have to fix. I don't know if they have to change their analytics, their scouting department, what, but you cannot keep missing on these first-round picks, especially a guy like a Turner, a Davenport, guys that you gave up picks for to go back into the first round to get a player like that. You have to hit on these first-round picks.
Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.